The New York Mets losing streak is finally over, and it's all thanks to Brett Baty. Is he the third baseman of the future once again? We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Fiinkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you wanted to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, the New York Mets had to battle Garrett Crochet at Fenway Park on a 3-game losing streak. It had all the makings of the Mets getting swept, heading home with their tail between their legs off of just an absolutely brutal road trip. But the Mets were able to step up, and they stepped up with an unconventional lineup, because when the lineup was first announced, there was a few things that stood out. One, Starlin Marte was batting second, playing left field. A couple things we haven't seen this season because Juan Soto has been in there every single day, batting second, except for that one day he had off. And Marte has only played left field once this season. It was an interesting strategy. We'll talk about Soto moving down the lineup a little bit more in the next segment. Certainly didn't help him in this game because he struck out the first 3 times he got up to the plate, but definitely an interesting thing moving forward. The other thing that was interesting, Brett Baty was in there, batting ninth, starting against a very tough lefty. Carlos Mendoza said that was for defense, and it makes sense that he batted him ninth if it was for defense. The Mets could have gone with Jeff McNeil, who's been swinging a pretty good bat. They could have had McNeil play second, Acuna play third. They could have had Nimmo start in left field and have Marte DH. But this decision showed how much they value Baty's defense, and also the fact that they're still confident that he might be able to get the job done offensively, and he ended up being the clear MVP of the game for the New York Mets until Brett Baty got his hit in the second inning. The Mets were already off to an 0-for-5 start with runners in scoring position. They had opportunities against Crochet, and they were not cashing in. First inning, Francisco Lindor, it's a leadoff double. And for those of you who listened to yesterday's show, I remember I had this little riff at the end of the show where I was talking about, you never know what might happen. Maybe Lindor is going to lead off the game with a double, and then Juan Soto will get a base hit and drive him in, and Pete Alonso will hit a 2-run homer, and everything will be forgotten. This lineup will be great again. So when Lindor hits that leadoff double, I perked up a little bit. I'm like, okay, are the Mets going to get something going? Could Starlin Marte be the answer in the 2-hole? He did have a good at-bat in that first inning, a 10-pitch at-bat, fouled off a bunch of tough pitches, but it ended with him popping out. Juan Soto looks at 3 pitches over the heart of the plate, strikes out looking brutal at bat. Pete Alonso has a better at bat, works a full count, but he strikes out. So the Mets strand Lindor, and they start the game 0-for-3 with runners in scoring position. Second inning, you have Mark Vientos get a leadoff walk. Luis Torrens hits a double off the monster. So the Mets got runners at second and third, nobody out. Real chance to do some damage. Tyrone Taylor pops out, and then Luis Acuna grounds out, and the run does not come across on either play. So once again, the Mets 0-for-5 now on the game with runners in scoring position when Brett Baty, the final batter in the lineup, your 9-hole hitter, comes up with that opportunity. Baty squaring off against a really tough matchup. I mean, Garrett Crochet is hard on anyone, but particularly left-handed batters. He's 6'6". He throws absolute cheddar, and it's just an uncomfortable at bat. But Baty, completely confident in the box, stayed in there. Fastball up and in at 97 miles per hour, and he's all over it, punches it up the middle for a base hit, and you have Vientos score easily. Torrens gets thrown at the plate, but still, regardless, the Mets scored a run, and they did it by getting a hit with runners in scoring position. So that was a big moment in the game. Now, unfortunately, Crochet was very good, and that was it for the offense for a good bit of time. Tylor Megill was also good. I'll talk about him more in the final segment, but through the first 4 innings, he was absolutely dominant, struck out 9 batters. In the 5th inning, he did get some rough breaks. The leadoff man hits a dribbler in front of the plate. Both Megill and Torrens are sort of caught in the middle of who should go for it, who shouldn't. Megill picks it up, throws it over Pete's head. So that is the first base runner of the inning. It was ruled an infield single. Then Megill gets his 10th strikeout of the game, but Carlos Narvaez hits a ground ball up the middle after that. Lindor makes a great play ranging to his left, but tries to make a backhanded flip to Acuna that they can't convert. Acuna doesn't come up with it, so everybody's safe. You got 2 runners on now. Megill hits a batter to load the bases, gives up a sac fly, then walks another batter to load the bases again, and he's pulled. So you have bases loaded, Alex Bregman up. But Huascar Braziban comes on, and once again, Braziban, the quiet hero for the New York Mets, he strikes out Bregman. He stays on, puts up 2 more strong innings. He erases a single in the 6th inning with an inning-ending double play. Then he strikes out the side in the 7th inning. So awesome performance by Braziban. He was holding a lead in that 7th inning because in the top of the frame, the Mets finally had a big rally. Luis Torrens and Tyrone Taylor each got base hits. Acuna then, and those were line drive singles, Acuna beats out a grounder in the infield to load the bases for Batty. The Red Sox go to the bullpen. Liam Hendricks was, I believe, the first guy out to relieve Crochet. They pull him for Brennan Bernardino to bring another lefty in to face Batty. Mendoza has a decision. Do you go to the bench? Do you get a righty in there? Which I'm trying to think who the righty would even be off the bench. I guess it'd pretty much just be Alvarez. So the only option would have been McNeil or Nimmo. Of course, he doesn't do that. He sticks with Batty, who had already gotten 1 clutch hit. And Batty has a good at-bat. He doesn't chase a couple sinkers that were off the plate, so he gets himself into a hitter's count 2-0, swings at a sinker off the plate, and misses it. Then he looks at another sinker that was on the black, called a strike, so now he's sitting 2-2. But Bernardino just continued to go to the well with that sinker on the outer half, trying to get a ground ball double play. Instead, Batty goes with it, hits a fly ball down the left field line that one-hops the monster. Could have been a double, but Acuna wasn't running. He was trying to tag up for some reason. So bad base running cost Batty a double, but he doesn't care because the other 2 runners came around to score. Huge hit for Batty. He's fired up. The Mets are fired up, and it's part of a 3-run inning as later on in that inning, Juan Soto would come through with a sacrifice fly. And then in the 9th inning, Francisco Lindor was able to hit his 10th homer of the season, clearing the monster to give the Mets an insurance run. But overall, this game comes down to Brett Baty. The Mets were 3 for 12 in the game with runners in scoring position. One of those hits was Acuna's infield single. The other 2 were the RBI hits by Brett Baty. Just massive, massive hits, both of them coming against a left-hander. The first one coming against Garrett Crochet. So that was awesome to see how well Batty was able to perform in those moments, still giving you that great defense at third base. And it does have me wondering, is Brett Baty once again, after a long hiatus from being in this discussion, the third baseman of the future for the New York Mets? I want to talk about that next, but we'll also touch on Juan Soto's frustrating game outside of the sac fly, and if moving down the lineup is what's going to spark his season. I'll go through all of that in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies you need from the site that's made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. So let's talk about Brett Baty. You look at his numbers right now, they're not going to pop out. He's got a 691 OPS, but what is important to note about that OPS? It's better than Mark Vientos, and it's better than Luis Angel Acuna. Vientos has a 674 OPS. Acuna has 642 OPS. Now, Vientos is hitting 281 over his past 26 games. There has been a good portion of this season where he has been a pretty solid hitter. He had a horrible start that has been dragging down his numbers all year, and now he's going through another little bit of a slump. I am not giving up on Vientos the bat, but the defense this year has been really bad, and whether that's him carrying some struggles at the plate out to the field, if that is just not being in as much of a rhythm because he's not playing every day, I don't know what it is, but it is evident that Brett Baty's defense is a huge difference maker for this team. That's why Mendoza started him. They put him in there because his defense at third base was so superior, and you are looking at a Cy Young candidate on the other side thinking, are we even going to score against Garrett Crochet anyway? Maybe let's just go with the defense, hope that they can keep the game close, and then late maybe you win it. And that's pretty much what happened. So Brett Baty, yes, his bat has been much better. He's a much more confident hitter. But what he has shown defensively this year is what at times is going to force the Mets' hand. And it's what's making this conversation about third base so interesting, because you have the guy in Vientos who did it last year. You couldn't have asked for a better season from Mark Vientos. The Mets do not go on that run without him. No doubt about it. There was not another third baseman in this organization, or one that could have been acquired via trade last year, that could have had the impact of Mark Vientos. He was unbelievable to put up the 27 home runs in the regular season, not playing the full year. And then in the playoffs, he was right there with Pete Alonso as the clutchest hitter on the team. So you have that as a backdrop coming into this year. And when the Mets bring back Pete Alonso, Vientos is your third baseman again. But Brett Baty had a great spring training. And it's just spring training. But I think that once again got the attention of this front office and the coaching staff that there's still a really good player in there with Brett Baty. I was going back through the archives today on Baty preparing for the show, and I found an episode that was heading into the 2023 season. I forgot this at Just Baseball, where I write, we had Brett Baty at number 8 on our top 100. Number 8. A top 10 prospect in all of baseball. That is how good he looked going into that season a couple years ago. It's been a long journey. 2023 was a horrible year for the Mets. I think, Baty's struggles were obviously a lot of, mental stuff, I'm sure, with just not being confident, and the swing got long. There's a lot of things that piled on for Baty, but I also think the fact that the Mets struggled so much as a team, and he was put in that role of, okay, well, you're going to be the savior. You're going to be the guy that sparks this lineup. I think that got him off on a rough footing. Last year, he starts out 2024, is hitting over 300 in the middle of April, has a little hamstring tweak, didn't go on the IL, starts to have some struggles. And as soon as he's going through this first major slump of the season, Mark Vientos bursts on the scene and grabs the job from him. So now here he is, third chance here at trying to hold on to an MLB spot. He is twice, in a position where injuries open up opportunities for him. First McNeil in spring training, then Winker. And now you're just seeing a confident player that is showing you what he can do. And what he can do is evolving, because now he's a good second baseman too. So playing Brett Baty every day does not necessarily mean he has to be your third baseman every day. It could mean that Mark Vientos is still getting some time at third base. It could mean that Ronnie Mauricio could play himself into this conversation. Mauricio's having a nice little run through Syracuse. 3 games, got hits in every game, and he's got homers in the last 2. Today, he went 2 for 2 with a homer and 2 walks. So far through 3 games, he's hitting 7 for 11, or he is 7 for 11. So I don't know, do the math on that. Hitting what? Just shy of 700 with 2 home runs and 2 stolen bases. Now, he's not playing full games yet, but he's pretty much getting there. And give him a couple more weeks, you never know where Mauricio's going to be at. And who knows, they might at some point make a flip. Maybe it's Mauricio up and Acuna down, and maybe Mauricio's getting some playing time at third base or second base. We don't know, but at this very moment, the Mets look to be at their best when they have Baty's glove in there at third and Vientos not hurting you defensively and just being your DH. And if that means that you never should have signed Jesse Winker, and Jesse Winker is just a little bit of an expensive bench bat or a guy that is sharing some time with Vientos at DH, by all means, that's fine. Okay, those are good problems to have. But right now, at this very moment, Brett Baty should be out there most days at third base because it makes you so much better defensively. And he's showing you these flashes of the offensive player he was always promised to be. Remember, this is a guy that was a higher regarded prospect than Baty, certainly than Mauricio, as well as Acuna. The only prospect that was maybe held in a higher regard is Francisco Alvarez, and part of that is just due to the fact that he's a catcher. I mean, you can make a case that throughout their minor league careers, Brett Baty was the best hitter. And so now that he's playing with this level of confidence and he's catching up to 97 miles per hour up and in from a tough lefty, and he's recognizing the spin of breaking balls and he's spitting on ones he can't get to, and he's able to go the other way a lot, and we're seeing that power to all fields. This guy's a changed player, and you got to ride the hot hand for now. If he starts to cool off, yeah, you're going to mix and match, and you'll still get Acuna out there. You'll still get Vientos out there. You're still going to get all these guys playing time. But Brett Baty right now should be the answer at third base. And if he can keep this up and he turns in a great season, he might once again be the third baseman of the future. Now, the other note I wanted to talk about from the lineup today is the fact that you saw Juan Soto batting third. This was a change. Soto's been batting second all year. Same place he hit last year in front of Aaron Judge. But in the past, Soto has said that he feels most comfortable batting third. So this move by Carlos Mendoza, I think, is a genius one. You got to change something up. He did it last year with Francisco Lindor. And I'll tell you what, Lindor did not just hit the ground running and lead off. I think his first game, he went 0 for 4. So what Soto just did, 0 for 3, 3 ugly strikeouts before getting the sac fly, that's pretty similar to what Lindor did when he started off in the leadoff spot last year. But something about that change in the lineup sparked Lindor. Maybe he does the same thing for Soto. Maybe he was never meant to be batting second, which going into the season, I talked about what my ideal Mets lineup was, and I thought that Vientos batting second made the most sense. I felt like Vientos could take advantage of the protection that Juan Soto provided more than any other hitter in the lineup, and it allowed you to be left, right, left with Lindor, who's a switch hitter, Vientos, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo. I still think that could be the answer. Yes, Vientos has not been swinging the hottest at bats, but neither has Nimmo. And I think those are the two real options to be in the two-hole, unless you want to get crazy and throw Brett Baty up there, which I don't think that they will just yet. For now, to me, it makes the most sense to stick Vientos in the two-hole and just see what happens. Because guess where Vientos hit during the playoffs? He batted second. So I think that's the move for this team right now. I really do. For me, I think that is the best course of action moving forward because it just might spark Vientos and Soto, and Alonso's back in the cleanup spot where he has been the best throughout his career. Got off to an incredible start batting third this season, but Pete's comfortable batting cleanup for sure. So I like that, and I just think that Juan Soto needed a day off. Okay, this is good for him to be able to put this road trip in the rearview mirror. I think this is probably one he's been looking forward to or had in his mind since he signed the contract, and it really did sound like it came down to Mets or Yankees. He chooses the Mets, and he knows that you're going back to Yankee Stadium to see all of your old teammates, to get booed like crazy. And I think that this entire road trip, that series has just weighed on him because you don't see Juan Soto taking as bad of at-bats as he did in this game. And yes, Garrett Crochet's tough. He is. But Soto couldn't get his bat off his shoulder through the first two at-bats. Literally did not. Struck out looking twice. Swung on a couple pitches in his third at-bat, but still struck out on 3 pitches. He saw 10 pitches in 3 at-bats and struck out 3 times. That's not Juan Soto. But I don't think that he, all of a sudden, it's like Space Jam and someone stole the powers from him. No, I think this is a guy who is feeling the weight of the contract, the weight of his decision, And all he needs is to get embraced by a raucous crowd at Citi Field, Mets Dodgers on Friday night, batting from the 3-hole. And you never know. That might be the thing that clicks Juan Soto into gear, and the Mets lineup can just roll from there. But I am interested in what this could do for the lineup. I am expecting Mendoza to stick with this change for a little bit, to have Soto and Alonso batting third and fourth, and then they'll probably mix and match the 2-hole guy at some point. It could be Vientos. Other points, maybe it's Nimmo. If there's a lefty on the mound, they could stick Marte back up there, although I'd prefer if they don't, but hey, it's not my decision. I think this is a wise move to just see if you can change something up and see if that makes Juan Soto get back to being himself. But he's going to get there. I've been stressing patience all week, and I'll continue to stress patience because this guy's just too good to not figure it out. So we'll see what happens there. I want to talk about Tylor Megill, though. Good start, and he might have held off a demotion. We'll go through all of that in just a minute. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. You get a live graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, Paul Blackburn had what could be his final rehab start today, and he was outstanding. Pitched like a man that's done with rehab starts. 7 innings pitched, allowed 1 hit, 2 walks, struck out 6, got up to 87 pitches. So really an outstanding start, his best by far in this journey back up. And so it's clear he's ready to go. He's all the way stretched out. So what does that mean for this rotation? I don't think it's a complete coincidence that Blackburn was lined up on the same day that Megill pitched. Because if Tylor Megill goes out there today and he gets knocked around Fenway Park after giving up 4 earned runs in his last 3 starts prior to this, I think the Mets are having some long conversations about potentially demoting Megill for Blackburn. And then when they need that 6th starter, going with a spot starter and then rolling back into a 5-man rotation as long as you can with the other off days that'll be there in the early to mid part of June. And then maybe Frankie Montas is ready, or maybe then after the 15 days, Megill's ready to make a spot start and go down. Like I think there was a world where Tylor Megill's roster flexibility with his option was going to come into play, and still probably will at some point this season, just with the sheer amount of depth that the Mets have in their rotation. But with what he did today, I think he'll stay, because he goes out there and he looked dominant. Granted, he doesn't make it through 5 innings, but a couple things could have gone very differently in that inning. If Luis Torrens is aggressive on that first ball in the 5th inning, that's a dribbler. I think if Torrens calls off Megill and just goes for it, like we've seen him do in the past, that's an out. Lindor making that play up the middle, if he's able to convert that, that could have been an out, and it could have been a completely different inning. But if you look at what Megill did in this game, he faced 20 batters. He struck out 10. And remember, through 4 innings, he struck out 9. He did strike out 1 in that 5th inning. I'm trying to count how many batters he faced. It was the 2 singles on the infield, strikeout mixed in there, hit by pitch, sac fly, walk. So 6 batters. So of the first 14 batters he faced, he struck out 9. That's dominant stuff. And he really leaned into his fastball with this start. 53 of his 85 pitches were either the 4-seam or the 2-seam. So when Megill is locating his fastball and he's going to it with confidence and conviction, and then mixing his slider and his changeup and, the occasional curveball. When Tylor Megill gets into that type of a rhythm where he's able to keep guys off the fastball, but able to go to it a lot, you see the stuff. You see the ability to strike guys out just with a fastball. And you look at what he's done this season, 10 starts, 3.56 ERA. He has 66 strikeouts and 48 innings pitched. This guy has really good stuff. Can he ever put it together completely as a starting pitcher? I don't know. Maybe long term, he ends up being better in the bullpen. But for now, with where the Mets are at, I think it makes all the sense in the world to give him at least another start and probably give him another month or two until Montas is ready. You look at how things are lined up right now. Mets have an off day as you're listening to this on Thursday. Over the weekend against the Dodgers, it'll be Griffin Canning, David Peterson, and Kodai Senga. Pretty good set of arms to throw out there against a good team. You'll have the White Sox on Monday. It'll be Clay Holmes. Tuesday would be Megill's turn, but Blackburn would also be available for that start. If they wanted to, they could piggyback those guys in that game on Tuesday, stick with a 5-man rotation, go to Griffin Canning, have an off day, go to David Peterson, Kodai Senga, and Clay Holmes versus the Rockies. And then when they head to LA to face the Dodgers, they would have Megill and Blackburn both ready when they need a 6 start in the rotation and roll them out for that series. Instead, if they wanted to potentially work a better starting pitcher into the front end of that series against the Dodgers, they could get really creative. Start Megill on Tuesday against the Red Sox, Blackburn on Wednesday, day off. You then go to Canning, Peterson, and Holmes, and you could save Kodai Senga to face the Dodgers. So Senga would have a full week off before he faced the Dodgers. That's an option. If they wanted to give Senga a little bit of an extended rest, that might be the move. And of course, getting him into that series. But the Mets, I think one way or the other, whether it's piggybacking them the first time, Megill and Blackburn, whether it's just going right to the 6-man next week, giving Canning the extra day, and just rolling with the 6-man rotation from that point on. So you would have, again, Megill on Tuesday, Blackburn on Wednesday, or vice versa, a day off on Thursday, and then you would go into Canning, Peterson, Senga, and then against the Dodgers, it'd be Holmes, Megill, Blackburn, and then back around to Canning, and that's just your 6-man rotation moving forward. I think the Mets are going to have a decision to make next week when it comes to all of this, but considering where the bullpen's at now, where you have Jose Castillo and Genesis Cabrera in there, I imagine the move would then just be to pick one of those two lefties, DFA the other, bring up Blackburn on the roster, and then just figure it out from there. And right now, Montas is getting closer and closer to beginning a rehab assignment. Once he does, the clock starts ticking. But I think until Montas comes back, I would not be surprised at all if the Mets decided to stick with a 6-man rotation, keeping both Megill and Blackburn in there, letting them sort of audition during that period of time. And then whoever's the odd man out when Montas is ready, if it's Megill, he'd go down to AAA. If it's Blackburn, he'd either go to the bullpen or get DFA'd. It's just that simple. So I think that's where the Mets are at right now. If Tylor Megill, again, got knocked around Fenway Park, I think it's a completely different discussion. But because he pitched really well and once again showed the stuff of being a really promising big league starter, I think the Mets are going to keep him up for a little bit and maybe lean into a 6-man rotation for the first time this season. So we'll see. We'll see. That's a conversation, a decision that'll be made next week. But I'm very curious where things go from here. I do still think one way or the other, Megill is going to play a role in this team throughout the entirety of this season. I'm not saying he won't end up in Syracuse at some point in time, but even if they get to a point where Montas and Minaya are healthy and Canning is still rolling, and obviously Peterson and Senga and Holmes and all those guys are healthy and doing their thing, where you might see Megill start to pitch out of that bullpen a little bit as a long man, and he might find success in that role. I really don't know, but at this point in time, I think he's probably got another 4 or 5 turns in the rotation, is my guess. But it could always go sideways, and that could definitely change. I thought he pitched really well, though. So I think for now, he's gotten off the hot seat for at least a little bit longer. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you who tuned in across the way here. On tomorrow's show, we got a Dodgers series to preview. I'll probably touch on some minor league stuff with no Mets game to discuss, so we'll go over some things there. Should be a really fun show. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, you don't miss it. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our goal of 14,000 subscribers. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to the Locked On MLB channel and watch Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that takes you around the action in Major League Baseball with insight from all of our local experts. If you want to find Locked On MLB Game Night, go to the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or the Locked On MLB podcast feed.